All right. How you going, everyone? I hope you're doing well. I'm excited because this is our last topic. And I know you've heard me say this over and over, but you will be really interested in what happens as humans age. It is a very interesting process, and it ultimately comes down to two very basic principles, and we will work those out as we go through. So let's get cracking. So for these lectures, I think there's going to be about 4 of them. Yeah, 4. I didn't use the textbook because there really wasn't much information there. So I used other resources, which I've included at the back. So here are our learning objectives for the entire topic. Okay, so make sure you are able to answer those, because these are going to form the basis for our questions in our final exam. Okay, so let's delve, is that a word, delve? Let's jump into the world of aging. Very interesting. Before we get started though, I think that we need to think a little bit about, what does the word aging mean? So aging just means the deterioration that happens in the human body over time, because that's what happens. Your body pretty much gets worn out over time. So that is aging. And one thing that happens in aging, okay, is that over time, cells get worn out. So that's one thing, we know about that. But cells also stop making copies of themselves. Okay? So at some point in your life, a cell is going to decide, this is it. I'm no longer going to make copies of myself. And we know that that happens, and it happens in quite a lot of systems. And when a cell decides not to make any more copies of itself, that is called senescence. Okay? Which is essentially, you no longer are going to do cell cycles, which means you're no longer going to do mitosis, which means that you're going to stop making copies. And cells go into senescence over time, more and more of them. Okay? So senescence is a part of aging, because eventually that tissue will deteriorate. Right, next. So let's start with the eyes and ears, okay? Because they are the senses that are most affected by age. Let's start with the eyes. So we have fat around our eye orbits, and what happens is that fat kind of shrinks. And this makes your eyeball kind of sink into your eye socket. Your eyelids, okay, your eyelids become more like kind of more relaxed, okay, and your eye muscles also weaken. So it means that this whole area kind of becomes quite kind of droopy. Also, the film that we have over our cornea, you know, sometimes that is not produced very well, which means that the front of your eye is not really being lubricated or protected very well, which means that your eye, your cornea, and the white around your eye can actually become quite sore because it's dry. You no longer have that film protecting it, so that can be kind of a factor as well. So you see a lot of our older people putting eye drops to keep their eyes nice and lubricated and moist. As you get older, your glands that make tears, you don't make as many tears as you would have otherwise, and the quality of your tears reduces as well, okay? Because as you get older, you are clearly going to be the happiest in your life, and you're no longer going to need to cry. That's what I say anyway. The lens is a big one, and I'll show you a few pictures of these. The lens is one of the parts of the eye that focuses light, and what happens is you start accumulating protein in your lens just because of time, okay? So these are changes in cells over time, and then that makes your lens become really foggy. Pupil diameter also, gets your kind of muscles, your entire muscles kind of get weakened. And also the vitreous, which is the jelly-like substance that's keeps your eyeball kind of that shape, can also dry up a little bit, because as you get older, you lose water. So you're losing water, so everything is kind of drying up a little bit. And this can be a problem because it can actually pull on the retina at the back. And you know what? And the cells in the retina, so the rods and cones, actually do start dying off. I mean, you get some dying off of photoreceptors in the periphery. But as you get older, you can get something where your macula starts to degenerate. So that just means that it's just time, and the issue is that those cells just die at some point in your lifespan. So let's have a look at some of these things so you get a better understanding. So here is I think this is a lady, and can you see here that the fat is kind of shrunken, so she's got her eyes are sunken a little bit more into her orbit, and you can see here how she's got the droopy kind of eyelids. Yeah. Let's have a look and see this. This is the cataract. So here is your lens. So this is your cornea, and this is your lens, and these two things bend light so they can be focused nicely on here on the retina. And what happens is that you get proteins accumulate, and you can get a blurry lens, and then you can't see as well. That's a cataract. And this is what happens when your photoreceptors start dying off. So as you can see, you have a little spot there where you can there are lots and lots of cones. That's a spot in your retina where it's really, really full of photoreceptors. And this is what it should look like normally. So you should have, your photoreceptors there, and then, or, they're all synapsing. And then you've got some blood vessels and things like that. But there's actually, don't worry too much about this, but there's actually two types of macular degeneration. But at the end of the day, macular degeneration just means that your photoreceptors are just dying. Yeah. Yeah, so you lose them over time. They just die. Okay, so let's think about, what this means. So we looked at the eyes, and we kind of saw that we lose cells, yeah? And, and when you start losing cells, then cells make tissues. And so your tissue integrity is going to be start to be lost. Yeah? Because remember, a tissue is a population of cells. So if those cells are no longer there or they look different, then that tissue is not going to behave, the same. Rightio, let's keep going. Let's look at the ears. What happens to your ears as we age? Well, the outside of your ear becomes bigger. You grow some hair. Yeah, and it becomes a lot drier and scaly. Now, the glands that make earwax don't make as much earwax. Okay, so that means that whole area can become really dry because it's not as lubricated as before. Another thing that could happen that's pretty drastic is that your ear canal can actually collapse. Yeah, so that's a possibility as well. Your eardrum can start becoming thinner and get stiffer. So that means that it won't be able to pick up those sound pressure waves as good as it once used to. The joints, moving the little bones in your ear, okay, can also start becoming a little bit stiff. So that means that your cochlea is not going to get that push of fluid that it needs in order to bend those hair cells. So that's going to impact on your ability to hear. You've got muscles there that can also become weaker, and you lose cells. Okay, so you're losing cells in the cochlea and you're losing cells in your vestibular apparatus, which is your balance area. So you're losing cells. Okay, so let's have a look at a picture here. So this picture here just shows all of the age-related changes that I just talked about to the ear. So I won't go through that again, but I just wanted just to show you, remember the cochlea? Okay, we have hair cells. So these are the ones that you lose as you get older. This word means age-related hearing loss, just in case you haven't heard that one before. Here is your tube. This can actually collapse. No, actually, this can actually collapse. Okay, this can actually become a lot narrower. Okay. Yeah, and then I just also added in this picture because this was just showing the hair cells that you actually have in your vestibular system. So we lose those as well. So essentially with hearing and balance, we kind of lose our receptors. So, yeah, which is not a good thing. So let's have a look at the consequences of this. And it's different for males and females, as you can see in the graph. Look at this. This is the frequency. So the higher the frequency, the higher the pitch. Like this is very low. This is very high. God, I'm an idiot. And then this is this is how loud it is. Okay. So can you see here that as you get older, you kind of, don't hear the higher frequencies unless they're really loud. Yeah. And this is the graph for men. So females don't lose their hearing as much as men. Yeah. Yeah, so that's kind of interesting. That's just a functional consequence of losing those cells. All right, so let's kind of think about any patterns that we saw. Well, I think again, for our ears and vestibular system, we do lose cells. And that means that the tissue is no longer doing what it used to do. And as you saw, there are functional consequences of that. Yeah. Right, I'll let you catch up on your learning objectives answers, and then I'll record another one.